This is Criteria. All right, hey there, everyone. Welcome to Criteria, the Catholic Film Podcast. My name is James Majewski, and I'm here with my co-host, Thomas V. Miras. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, James. How's it going?
Good. It's good to be back in the hot seat. You've been away for a little while, and we haven't cut an episode, I think, since the Padre Pio episode came out.
Yeah, that's right. And we're grateful to everybody who watched that and commented, and also to Matt Frad for sharing that on his channel, because that helped us get the word out on that.
No, definitely. It's been our most viewed episode of any of our podcasts, for that matter.
That's true.
Yeah. I think my hair broke the internet for a moment there.
Some people commented on it. Some people were amused. Other people were apparently enraged.
Yeah. Well, you know what started as a little gimmicky joke to herald in our final Vatican film list film, Napoleon, is now, this is it. This is my due now. I'm doubling down. I cut the bangs even shorter. So we'll see.
Wait, isn't that mean it's more normal?
Is it? I don't know.
It's more normal if the bangs are shorter. It's less normal if they're longer.
Maybe that's why I think it looks better.
Yeah, because it looks more like you're like a, Mick Jagger or something instead of the page boy.
Totally. So yeah, we're not in our usual studio. We're cutting a remote episode here, which we tend to do when we're covering, quickly covering these contemporary reviews. We've got another recent film that we've got on the docket today. Comes out.
It's so recent that it's in the future.
Yeah, that's right.
That's as recent as it gets.
It comes out on July 4th, but this film actually was made like 5 years ago or something. It's kind of been in the pipelines for quite some time. Of course, we're talking about Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviezel, and about Tim Ballard, the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, which is, I guess, a nonprofit organization that its mission is to find and rescue children in who are caught in sex trafficking. I don't actually know a lot about the organization, or this individual Tim Ballard, but I understand that maybe there's some question about. I don't know. You were telling me something before we started cutting this episode, Thomas.
Well, yeah, I had a couple of reasons for being a little bit apprehensive coming into this movie. And one of them is that I, over the years, read a little bit about this organization, and there's been various criticisms of it. Basically, the way this organization operates is that it goes into its focuses on international cooperation in ending sex trafficking of children. And so basically they will work with local law enforcement in other countries, and they've done a number of things in South America, for instance, and involved in stings and elaborate raids and stings and things like that. And they've received some criticism.
Well, so the point is you kind of have to take this all with a grain of salt, because on the one hand, this organization is very, let's say, visible. They clearly have a good PR department. Tim Ballard's going around giving interviews. Everything looks very sleek. The pitch is very on point.
Right.
And
they will get people. They do fundraising by like getting rich people. They like turn their house into a situation room for a raid, so that they can like watch the raid live as it's happening, like from their house, and feel really involved. But they've gotten some flack for doing things in an unprofessional manner or a dangerous manner in terms of involving people who aren't really qualified to be involved in this way. Or right. In another case, there was a situation where they are involved in working with their local law enforcement and doing stings and stuff. That's a real thing that they've done. But in some cases, like, they've rescued kids and then they've handed them off to organizations that are supposed to be sort of taking care of them and doing aftercare for their trauma and stuff. But in one case, for example, I think there were like 26 kids that they gave to this organization, and then the organization let them all go because they just couldn't handle all these kids. And so, like, where are these kids now? Like, does anybody know, kind of a thing? You know, did they ever get reunited with their families? So there's various questions. And you know, this film does portray things it portrays sort of the roots, the beginning of the inception of this but it doesn't really even portray the organization coming into existence. It portrays the sort of initial inspiration for it, of these formative experiences that Tim Ballard, who was an FBI agent in real life, and left to form this organization.
I think Department of Homeland Security.
Sorry,
is that FBI?
Yes.
Yeah.
Department of Homeland Security specifically, though. You're right. Sorry about that. And left in order to pursue this international cooperation that he just wasn't able to do under the aegis of Homeland Security. And so, there's criticisms, and you know, some of them maybe have ulterior motives. Some of them are clearly legitimate. Like there's definitely places where Operation Underground Rescue has been shown to have exaggerated their involvement in certain operations, or just, you know, fudged the facts a little bit. Now, there have been plenty of great men in history who have exaggerated what they did, but they still did great things. So I don't actually see that as a reason to. I mean, it's documented that they have been involved in rescuing children from sex trafficking. So that's a real thing. So my point is, I'm not dismissing them, but I'm also not like I'm coming into this movie in a way just trying to judge it as a film, and not like judge it based on whether, you know, it all totally checks out, or that whether this organization is totally worthy of my financial or support or something, which is not like a pitch up, you know, not an appeal that they make at the end of the movie or anything like that. So,
well, actually it is.
Well, no, they make an appeal to share the movie with others. They make an appeal for Angel Studios, but they don't say go here to learn more about Operation. You know,
fair enough. You know, but on the other, I was going to say, on the other hand, that a lot of the criticism does seem to be coming from a certain sector of society that, you know, is also trying to lump them in with Trump and QAnon, right. And you can understand why an organization like this might catch a lot of flack and get a lot of resistance, especially when we're recording this right now in the middle of June. We're in the middle of Pride Month, right. Where if I was listening to an interview with Tim Ballard, and he was talking about the things that groomers will do to try to break children down and sort of like, you know, prepare them for this sort of thing. And two of the things he identified were exposing them to explicit sexual material and separating them from their parents. You know, obviously, you know, there's kidnapping, but there's more, you know, just getting them to think that their parents, you know, aren't trustworthy, or that their parents are actually the ones who did this to them, or, you know, that you look at that, and that is like the textbook for the like rainbow agenda on children, you know, and the kinds of images that we're seeing of children at these pride parades, and like the stuff that they're being exposed to. I mean, it's grooming of children happening like writ large, you know, and so you know, there's and that's not even talking about things like, you know, the Mexico-US border, or globalization, which is more the type of stuff shipping.
Which is more the type of stuff that this movie is focused on.
Well, you know, insofar as it's focused on it, but it doesn't really. I would say that it doesn't really veer into the political questions.
It's focusing on more straightforward kidnapping.
Yes.
But you know, even the connection that critics might make between, say, Jim Caviezel and QAnon, it's not totally unfounded, because, you know, he did give a talk where he was talking about adrenochroming, which, you know, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you don't. You can look it up. But like, I'm not going to get into the weeds here, because the point is not to criticize, you know, his beliefs, and that doesn't come into the movie. So again, looking at the movie just on its own merits, but mentioning Caviezel, who, you know, we all love, and he's a wonderful actor. That was the other reason I was a little bit apprehensive going into this was a lengthy interview that I listened to, very recent, between Caviezel. It was on, Steve Bannon has a podcast, and he had Caviezel on. And like this whole interview, Caviezel is talking about this movie, and he's kind of like, almost like guilting people into seeing it. Like he's saying, people don't want to see this movie because they know that if they see it, they're not going to do anything about the problem once they find out. And like, we're all going to be held accountable before God if we don't do something. And I just wanted to be like, okay, so like, what should I do? Because he never says, what should I do? And even at the end of this movie, to its credit, it doesn't say, now go donate to Operation Underground Railroad, but it also just says like, share the movie. So it's like, I guess it's an awareness thing. He does mention that he wants this to be for sex trafficking of children, what, Uncle Tom's Cabin did to raise awareness about the cruelty of slavery, and that's a value in itself. Obviously, it's a story worth telling too. But I kind of wanted to be like, well, like, just tell me what I can do, and then I like won't have to watch your movie. Not that I don't want to watch the movie, but like, I don't need to see a movie to know that sex trafficking of children is happening and that it's wrong. Like, I'm already on board with all that. And so like, it rubbed me the wrong way to be like, told that like, I have to see this movie for the cause, if that makes sense. And so like, again, like, and those kinds of strategies, which I don't think that Caviezel is saying that in a cynical way to make money. I think that he believes, he's saying that sincerely, but that kind of rhetoric tends to make me less confident in the quality of a film rather than more, when people just need to do that. And in fact, one of my least favorite moments in the film is when Caviezel looks into the camera and like delivers a speech about child sex trafficking. Now he's talking to another character, but he's looking straight into the camera, and the effect is that he's talking to the audience as well. So that said, again, I came into this movie wanting to give it a fair shot and wanting to just judge it on the merits, because it is an important topic, and Jim Caviezel is a great actor, and so I want to give it a chance. And long story short, it's a good movie, thankfully. Yes. And so I'm happy to be able to say that. And even though I part of the reason I'm saying the other stuff is that I think it's like, maybe some people will respond well to the kind of messaging that Caviezel was putting out there in that interview. But I just want to point out that like, it's also going to turn people off, and that I don't think it's really, I don't necessarily think it's a great trend for the arts to have all these movies be kind of like movies for the cause, and you have to see it for the cause. And there's a lot of that going on with Angel Studios, which is the distributor that finally picked up this movie after it had been sort of floating around for 5 years, and they're run by Mormons. Tim Ballard's a Mormon, so that might have something to do with it. They also are they do the Chosen, or they distribute it anyway. There's a lot of that going on over at Angel Studios. A lot of that like, share this and spread this because the message is important. And I don't think that is the there's a place for that in like important message movies, but like I don't know that that's like the future of where we want like the future of Catholic art to be.
Well, but to argue the other side, this is an independent studio basically, that is making a movie like this, and so you have to rely on the grassroots to get something like this done. Yeah. And so, what's a way of motivating people? I mean, you can try to motivate them in the name of art, or you can link it to sort of like some sort of social interest. And I think that if you want to just kind of give them the benefit of the doubt.
But how does that affect the types of stories that get made and get funded?
No, of course. And I agree with you. But already the types of stories that are being made and getting funded is pretty decided in Hollywood, you know? Yeah. So if you're going to try to like branch out from that, you have to find a way of funding this, because film and television is just incredibly expensive. I mean, nothing else really touches it. Right. And so this has just always been a problem with film, is where do we get the money and how do we get this done?
And the fact is this movie, it's legitimate because this movie was a project that they made and then tried to find somebody to distribute it. Yeah. And it's not like we need to find a way to get somebody to make a movie. So therefore, what topic can we make it about?
Right.
It's not like that was the
right. And
cart was
Angel
drawing
Studios,
the horse or whatever
Angel Studios, their whole thing right now with The Chosen is this pay it forward stuff and sort of roping
which they're
people
also
in
doing
that
with this
way.
film. Yeah,
they're doing it here too. So it just kind of makes business sense, but then it's also for a good cause. And so I don't dock it too hard, but I do see what you're saying from an artistic standpoint.
But the main thing is I just don't want to be like guilted into seeing a movie, especially since I'm already, at least like 95% on board, like with the cause in general, if not with this particular organization necessarily, in that I'm not condemning it, but I would want to know more or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
So anyway, Jim Caviezel is, we mentioned him, but we should also mention the director is a Catholic, Alejandro Monteverde. He directed the film Bella, which I think came out when we were in high school, and it was a really big deal in the Catholic world, this pro-life movie. And I never actually saw it. Did you see it?
Me neither.
So, but one of the other actors who's also apparently a devout Catholic, Eduardo Verástegui, and is in the movie and also produced it. And I think he was the main actor in Bella.
Okay, so we should start talking about the movie. I think that's enough said by way of introduction, but I'm glad that we said it because it's, this is a political movie and it has a message and it's made by a guy who has a stake, and we just have to sort of, acknowledge all of that up front,
right,
and then kind of set it aside and deal with it as a film.
Yes,
which I'm happy to do because it turns out the film is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that because you could totally see how a movie like this might not be so good. But actually, I think that this movie has a ton of mainstream appeal. It's clear that it's made for a wide audience. It's got all shot on location, all these great places.
Yeah, that was nice.
Good cinematography.
Very
great
atmospheric
acting.
look to it. Yeah, with the
Totally,
colors and
the
the shots,
lighting
and when they're in, say, oh gosh, not Juarez.
Cartagena.
When they're in Cartagena or Tijuana, for instance, that's just very atmospheric and nice.
Yeah, good lighting. The soundtrack is great. There's a nice score. There's a musical motif that's woven throughout.
The score is by this guy who did the score for Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So everything
and also
just
Wrath
feels...
of the Titans.
Everything's very, A quality. You could see this being played in any major theater in the U.S.,
Caviezel compared it to Taken in terms of like the quality of sort of matching Hollywood filmmaking and quality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, it's a film with a message, and it weaves that message in throughout. You already alluded, Thomas, to this moment halfway through the film where we're given some stats, we're given some information, but it's sort of couched within the story because Jim Caviezel is trying to convince this wealthy billionaire to get in on the job. But really, it's like an action movie. It's like a thriller.
Right.
It begins. My favorite part of the film is probably the first third of it. It begins really devastatingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I think that if you just watched the first 30 to 40 minutes, and you couldn't watch the rest of it, you'd be fine because you kind of get the point in that opening half hour or so.
Right.
And
if we can talk about that a little bit, the beginning before the title hits, which is a lengthy beginning, it shows the kidnapping of this brother and sister. And are they in Colombia? Or they're just somewhere in South America.
They're brought to Colombia, but
they're brought to Colombia.
I think they're in some other Central or South American.
So basically, the scheme is, that we do see during the title sequence, we see actual footage of people being kidnapped, of children being kidnapped, just grabbed, just yanked while their parents aren't looking, and that's a way that it's done. But in the case of the characters in this film, it's a bit more of an elaborate scheme for the kidnapping, and that is basically the talent agency, which of course we know is used to get young women into pornography too, out in Hollywood. You know, women, and has been since the beginning of Hollywood, really.
Right.
Young woman goes out to Hollywood, wants to be a star, and we'll make you a star, and you just have to pose for these photographs and that kind of thing. In this case, they discover that this girl has talent, and this woman comes and gets the father to bring her, and for some reason her younger brother is there as well, and he goes and leaves them there for this audition, and then the kids are all taken away. But the part that for me was the most upsetting was the whole audition montage.
Oh man,
because it's the
brutal.
most subtle and tasteful, but yet devastating. One of the most devastating parts of the film, because they're just teaching the kids to pose, and already it's like, if you wanted a case that they're like just shouldn't be child models or child actors professionally, like, but because it's not like so different from what happens in, you know,
no,
in
I mean,
Hollywood.
I would say it's no different,
except
really.
for that they're kidnapped against their will and their parents' wills. But they're, you know, unbutton your top button, you know, and you know they're giving these looks that are like these adult looks, you know, child models having adult facial expressions to the camera, and like you know, so it's very the film handles this. It is quite upsetting, but it handles things in a very tasteful way. And this is one example. Like, you don't need to be so explicit to show the reality of something evil, and you arguably are more effective, haunting in that way. There's a great musical piece that's playing underneath. It's very dramatic, and you know, you've seen these children. That's the thing that's so disturbing about it, is like you've seen them in ads in the magazines, or on, you know, the subway, or in your Netflix show, and you've seen parents dress their children this way, or you know, so it's speaking to, right away, it's already something
speaking
broader.
To something broader, yes. Which is this sexualization of children. You don't have to be a pedophile to be, you know, kind of complicit in that. And if there's anything that sort of like alludes to what's happening out there in LA in the film, which might be, you know, if anybody wanted to connect this to other aspects of politics, you know, like that would be it. Because like you say, it's like it's photo shoot for children, and nothing happens there that wouldn't happen in a photo shoot for prepubescent children out there in LA. You know, it's not over the top, but it's incredibly creepy. And so then after that opening sequence and the opening credits, then we're introduced to Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel. And they're doing a sting on in California on you know, a home where a man is uploading child pornography. And you see some of the pictures basically that, you know, in digital format that were just taken in this little photo shoot. You know, these are now the glamour shots that are used to shop these children around on the internet. And so it's connecting the dots about this network of abuse that implicates a lot of people in a lot of different countries doing different things, but at the end of the day, it's victimizing children. And they do the sting, they arrest the pedophile, and then we have this really fascinating series of scenes between Jim Caviezel and the pedophile, where Jim is basically trying to win his trust and trying to you know, leverage this connection to sort of go deeper into the network. The struggle of the film is that, and it's laid out right at the beginning, the demoralizing thing for these agents is that they are arresting pedophiles, but they're not rescuing children. And so so Caviezel's performance really sells this. This drama that's happening in the character of Tim Ballard himself, where he has to watch these videos. You know, he has to see this material, and it connects him to these perpetrators. Now, it doesn't connect him as he's not watching it, you know, for his self-satisfaction. In fact, it's destroying him. It's tearing him up.
Yeah.
And yet there's this identification that happens that he's going to have to tap into even more when he's going undercover and he's playing, a pedophile who's trying to solicit child sex. And and so there's this, it's just the way that the film handles this early on, I think is so interesting, because we're shown the struggle, but then we see his this sort of suaveness with which he's able to win this pedophile's trust and sort of work on the inside and play the part. And so there is this kind of ambivalence. It's this where we almost need another scene just to confirm for the audience that this guy isn't in fact a pedophile. There's an interesting tension. Like, of course I know this guy is not a pedophile, but what we're seeing in these opening scenes, it blurs the line for the audience as for the character. Right. And so that tension is alive, and you understand why he needs to sort of see this through and rescue these children. It becomes personal for him, right? Yeah. And every development in the story, as he goes deeper and deeper, it's energized, and this is good from a film point of view, from a narrative point of view. It's given this personal connection, which makes it personal for the audience as well. We want to be rooting for right. this protagonist. But I just think that Caviezel backs it up with just such a nuanced and intense performance. Yeah. Where he's seamlessly going in and out of these modes where he has to, see these terrible things and then play the part.
Yes.
And that was also very affecting for me. And then the final thing that I'll say about this first sort of third of the film that makes it so intense and so powerful is the father who loses his children.
Right.
The performance we get from him is also it's not overdone, it's actually very tasteful and very powerful. Not just when this father has lost his children, and I don't want to spoil the film, but it does happen early on. He's reunited with his son, and that scene when the little boy runs up and hugs his father. I mean, there were a few moments in this film where, I seldom cry during a movie. I'm never bawling, but I definitely got tears in my eyes, right. In a few moments. And that was one of them that just, it made me think about actually, how much God the Father loves us. It made me think about what it's going to be like in heaven, because this little boy was rescued from hell. And it was because of a father's love, right. And I like how fathers are really sort of put at the front line of this. Yeah. Tim Ballard, of course, is himself a father. That plays into the film, as I'm sure it does play into his personal reason for doing this work in real life. But it's also this father. We don't see the mother of the children, who are kidnapped. It's this father who makes the appeal to Jim Caviezel,
but there's a third character who's not a father, which is also interesting because he's coming at it from a different angle. The character who helps Caviezel the most, really, in his efforts is this guy who used to be. He worked for the cartels. I think he was their accountant or something. I forget what it says, but and then he
laundered money for them.
Yeah, that's right. He did time, got out, and now what he does is he buys children and gives them a second chance. He buys them to liberate them, and this is interesting. And this is this is basically the MO of Operation Underground railroad is that's how they set up their stings. In this case, this guy's actually going through with the purchases rather than doing it as a sting. His concern is not to catch the criminals, but to liberate the children. And that's interesting. And this is one way that I'll just mention, taking it back to the real life, is that's one aspect that's been criticized of Operation Underground Railroad, is that they there's the danger that they actually stimulate supply, by increasing demand, even in a sting way, because they're requesting children for these parties so that they can rescue a bunch of children, a few dozen children at once. But that raises the question whether that motivates people to kidnap more children and supply them, in that local economy. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. But, it makes me think there have been religious orders in Catholic history that their whole focus was doing precisely that, to rescue Christians who were enslaved by the Moors. I want to say Saint Raymond Pinafort was one of these. I forget the name of the order, but there's a couple of them that would basically lay out the funds to buy Christian slaves of the Muslims and set them free. And so that there's like a long tradition of that actually in the Catholic Church, which I thought was just worth mentioning. But basically this guy, this third guy, he's coming at it from a different angle because he has a criminal past, and he's very much involved with soliciting prostitutes. And his turning point, as he tells Caviezel's character, is that he, after release from prison, he slept with a prostitute and then realized that she was not 25, as she had said, but 14. And he saw basically her sadness.
There's a great line. I wrote it down. He said, that he realized that I'm the sadness in her eyes. Me. I'm the darkness. And I know the darkness has to die.
Right. And at that point, he almost kills himself.
Yes.
But then he says that he basically prays to God instead, and then receives this inspiration to do what he's been doing of rescuing kids. It's
a fascinating character. With his introduction, the film sort of shifts tonally, and it becomes like a heist movie, really.
Yeah.
Because Tim Ballard is going around and he's collecting his Ocean's 11, basically. It turns out to only be like 4 or 5 people that are in on it, but he has to also recruit...
like a noir-like atmosphere in bits.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it's they're, of course, they're law enforcement, but they're basically pulling off a heist,
Right.
And so it for that second third of the film, it kind of becomes this heist movie that everybody knows. We covered a film like this on the Vatican film list.
Yeah.
And it becomes really enjoyable. I mean, this is like Hollywood popcorn fare.
Right.
And this character is a big part of that. He brings some comic relief. He's a very colorful personality. But then also this moment that we've been talking about, where he's talking about sort of his origin story, I think is another instance where you see how it's personal and
Go ahead.
He's identified. It's in a different way than Tim Ballard's character is identified, but he realizes that he is also implicated and that it's personal for him. And yes. I think that's part of the message for the film too, is that we to the extent that we are sort of a part of this sexualized culture that is abusing children,
right?
We're all part of, we're all implicated.
I'm not afraid to say that I relate to this character too, and the fact is that in America, I would say a great many of the people watching this film, of the men watching this film, are going to relate to the father, and they should have the self-awareness to also relate to this character, I think.
Yeah.
Because any father, any Catholic father, for instance, who has struggled with pornography, as many of us have, it's a commonplace in the sort of anti-pornography world to point out the connection between pornography and sex trafficking. And even if you are one of the many people who watches pornography without paying for it, you may be watching, without knowing it, you may be watching somebody who has been trafficked. At the very least, you're almost certainly, I would say you can be morally certain that you're watching people who, if they're not underage, then they were abused as children in some way, and that is what led them to seek a career in pornography. At the very least, I would say that.
Yeah, well, there was all sorts of controversy surrounding some of these pornographic websites that actually were found to have video of underage children.
Or non-consensual things of other...
Yes, right. And you just have to be naive to think that that this is not sort of contributing to and directly complicit with abuse on a wide scale,
right? And so I think that the inclusion of this character, I think makes the movie a lot stronger than it would have been if he hadn't been included and it had just been a bunch of heroic fathers rescuing children. Because I mean, he in a very real way has been complicit. Not intentionally in the abuse of children, and so once he realizes that, he makes a turn, and you get the impression that it's not just a turn in this one aspect, but that he refers to God, and whether he's a totally converted man or not, we don't know, but that he is a changed man in a real sense, on a deeper level, and he's a fun and colorful character, but that I think that third aspect of the picture is really, really, really important.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Because many people are both.
Yes. Yeah, I like that fathers and men are at the forefront of this. Because there's just something so... This is a bit of a tangent, but there's something so fundamental about the protection of children, because they're so absolutely vulnerable, and so it's sort of happening on when you talk about child abuse or child sex trafficking. What's happening on sort of a macro level? Is a macrocosm of the failure to protect children on a micro level, like the failure of fatherhood on a microcosmic level. Kind of thinking out loud here. I think that
we sympathize with that father whose children are stolen, but I mean he makes a mistake.
Yes, right. I mean he brings his children to this hotel.
He's very
for an
naive.
all-day audition. Yes, right. And so I guess the point I'm trying to get to is that if there is a lot of resistance to this story or to this issue in particular, it's not just because it's hard to swallow. It's a hard thing to look at because it's so vile. But I think because it really demands that people step up. Right, it demands a response, and in particular from men, and I mean a comprehensive response, yes, on this sort of like political action macrocosmic level, but also a response of you need to be taking care of your children. You need to be taking care of your daughters. You need to not be looking at pornography. There's kind of a lot of implications. And so we've talked about how small sins lead to bigger ones. And this is like the big sin. And it exposes a real big vulnerability, which is our children and how we can basically do anything we want to them.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be, selling my children into sex slavery to be selling out my children.
Right.
And so I think that's, it's one of the things that I appreciate about the film, is one of the things I appreciate about these three men who are at the center of it and at the center of doing something about it, and playing the role of the provident father, the protective father,
Right.
Yeah. Karina was telling me that she read somewhere, or it was some interview with a convicted child sex offender, who had said that when he was sort of looking for a victim, he would look to the father. And if the father intimidated him or scared him, he just wouldn't even go there. But if the father didn't intimidate him, then that would be, like a sort of a first green light.
Right.
Something to think about.
Yeah, common sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's a good movie.
Well, no, I wanted to say one more thing, is that there is a third act of the film, basically,
Right.
and it becomes... after it's a heist movie, it becomes like a secret agent movie,
right?
Because now he's doing this infiltration and extraction deep in the Colombian jungle, where there are these, this like warlord and rebel soldiers and
Right.
drug cartels, and so that's all very exciting too. And it's a good movie. I think it's an enjoyable movie. If you have your weekend, you want to go to the movies over the weekend, it's not going to just be a bummer, right? You could see how going to watch a movie like this might just be a big bummer, and I'm just going to get basically a documentary about this issue. But actually, no, you get like this thrilling A-list blockbuster type film that also alerts you to a very, very important issue. One more thing I want to say before we wrap up is that there's a scene where I might be mistaken, but I don't think I am. You can see Jim Caviezel is wearing a brown scapular.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it's awesome. So we've already mentioned that Tim Ballard himself is a Mormon, but of course Jim Caviezel, he's a Catholic actor, and when they're on the island during the island raid, and he's wearing his Hawaiian shirt, and it's unbuttoned down, you can see his gold chains and stuff that are part of the costume, but then there's clearly a brown scapular and a little silver cross
that's
on
awesome.
it. Yeah,
I will say, just as one other little point, is that I appreciated that there were moments, because Jim Caviezel is a very intense guy, and he's playing an intense situation, an intense character, but there are a couple of little moments of levity, not just the fake levity where he's pretending to be a child trafficker with other child traffickers, but there's a moment where he finally finds this girl in the jungle, and he's trying to talk to her in Spanish, and the way I read it is he gets flustered. He's so stunned that he finally found her that he gets flustered and forgets his Spanish, and it's just crap. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say crap, but it's appropriate for the moment, and it's
totally.
It's it's a great little moment where he's like, I can't remember my Spanish anymore.
Totally. And there's a lot of really good moments like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the performance that he delivers here is really top notch. And it was just I was so happy to see it. So yeah, I definitely recommend the movie.
Yeah.
I think that it's certainly not for children. And that is something that I thought about at a couple of moments watching this, is I don't know, there are these child actors who are in the movie, right? And again, everything's handled very tastefully. Nothing is done directly to any of these child actors. But there were some harrowing scenes where, a young girl is on a bed, and a man kind of comes stumbling in very ominously, and then draws the curtains, and I found myself thinking about things from that child actor's perspective. Maybe there are certain things that you can tell them to coach them, but
or the guy fiddling with his pants, standing in front of the bed. Again, nothing is seen. No articles of clothing are even removed. It's done from even the camera angle is done tastefully, but still you wonder what he was actually doing in the and you just, it's a creepy
you just
environment
wonder,
for a kid to be in.
Exactly. That's my whole point is of course this film really can't be made without the inclusion of child actors,
right?
But you just, like I wouldn't want my children to star in this movie.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm
sure that I think it would be very interesting to speak to the director and ask him how they handled that. I would be very interested to hear what he had to say about that. So, but because clearly they're trying to be tasteful, you know, and they're trying to be careful.
But you want to make sure that you're taking care of these children that are working on your set.
And I'm sure they were concerned to do that, so I'd just be interested to know how they handled it, because that might inform the way we talk about other movies that deal with similar issues, you know. All right, well, yeah, so you can, again, the movie comes out in theaters the eve of July 4th. If you want to get involved in the whole pay it forward thing where you buy Sound of Freedom tickets for others to watch it for free, which is something that Caviezel talks about after the end credits of the film, you can go to angel.com/SOF. And, so we'll be back soon with more of our standard programming, but it's nice to see Caviezel again turning in an excellent performance.
Absolutely.
All right. See you guys next time.
Criteria is a production of CatholicCulture.org. Check out our other podcasts, including Way of the Fathers, an early church history podcast hosted by Mike Aquilina, Catholic Culture audiobooks bringing to life classic Catholic writings, and the Catholic Culture Podcast, an interview show exploring Catholic arts, culture, and issues. You'll find all of this, as well as Catholic news, commentary, liturgical year resources, and much more at CatholicCulture.org.